Hello, and welcome to the third Cosmia event delivered by Kirklees Libraries in partnership with the Cosmia Festival. The festival theme this year is the end of the world as we know it, climate change and apocalyptic fiction. This morning's author is M.G. Leonard, and her book, The Tale of the Toothbrush, is perfect to illustrate the theme of climate change. This is a fantastic book and it's very beautifully illustrated by Daniel Riley. If you want a copy of the book, Read Bookshops in Huddersfield are offering a 20% discount to support the festival. In order to take advantage of this, you'll need a special code, which I'll give you along with Read's details at the end of today's session. M.G. Leonard is an award-winning best-selling author of children's books. Her Beetle Boy books have sold in 39 countries, and she's currently writing the screenplay for a TV series based on the trilogy. She and her Beetles have appeared on Blue Peter, Spring Watch Unsprung, Countryfile, Sky News, and featured in the BBC documentary The Bug Couple. Mary is one of the authors working with founder Lauren St. John on the Authors for Oceans initiative, campaigning to reduce single-use plastic, and that's the topic of her latest book, which we're going to talk about today. So before we talk any more, I want to introduce M.G. Leonard to Kirklees and to Cosmia Festival. Hello, hello, Maya.
Hello, thank you for having me. So, first of all, I would just like to say it's a real delight to be here on your computer screens on a Monday morning, first Monday of half term for most of us, I think. And to be talking about something that's so dear to my heart. Climate change and the impacts of plastic pollution are something that concern me greatly, and so far have really been the themes of most of my books. But today I'm going to talk to you very specifically about this book, The Tale of a Toothbrush. And this book came about really because I had previously written lots of chapter books. I'd written long books, about 50,000 words with big stories. And I thought maybe I cared about the problem with plastic in the ocean so much. I thought maybe I should write a chapter book that was all about plastic in the ocean. But the more I learnt about plastic in the ocean, I realized the subject is so big and I couldn't really find a way in that wasn't sad and upsetting. And I don't really like to write sad or upsetting books. And then my publishers, Walker Books, they said to me, we'd really love somebody to write a picture book about this subject. Have you got any ideas? And I suddenly realized that it was a mistake to try and turn this theme into a chapter book, because you can tell so much more with illustrations. And the lovely thing about The Tale of a Toothbrush is that Daniel Riley, who is the amazing illustrator that's drawn all of the pictures in this book that I'm going to read to you in a little bit, he is also someone like me who campaigns against plastic being in the oceans. He is someone who's a part of a group called Surfers Against Sewage, and he is someone who passionately believes in this theme as well. So I had this idea that perhaps telling a story instead of with lots of words, but with pictures and words, might be a way of telling a bigger story, but in a shorter space. That's the great things about stories, is that you can expand them and you can contract them. And sometimes the shortest stories can be about the biggest themes. And this is such an important and big theme that actually a picture book is where it needs to be told. So I'm going to introduce you to Sammy, who's the hero of The Tale of a Toothbrush, shortly. But I really want to talk, before I do read this story, about why I chose a toothbrush. Because there are lots of different types of plastic that get into our oceans and cause lots of problems for birds and for fish and for humans, actually, and all living things. But I really wanted this story to be one that wasn't upsetting or depressing. I wanted it to have a hero that was a piece of plastic, because we often think that plastic is bad, but it's not plastic's fault that plastic exists. It's our fault. We are the ones that make the plastic items. We are the ones that then throw those plastic items away. If we didn't make the plastic items, then there wouldn't be any plastic in the oceans. So it's not plastic's fault. So I think it would be a mistake to say that plastic is bad. Really, we are the foolish ones for making the plastic in the first place. So before I wrote this book, I learnt about lots of different types of plastic. And the facts I learnt about toothbrushes really surprised me. First of all, most of you probably have a toothbrush at home that looks a little bit like this chap here. Now, this is a very ordinary plastic toothbrush, the kind that you might find in your supermarket. And you can see that this plastic toothbrush has got a white body, but it's also got this green stripe here and a little green bit here. And of course, it's got these blue plastic bristles. Now, this toothbrush is a normal toothbrush and it can't be recycled. It can't be recycled because when you recycle plastic, you have to take apart the different types of plastic. And this rubbery plastic here, which is put there so that you can grip it when you clean your teeth, this rubbery plastic can't be separated from this hard plastic. So you see, a toothbrush like this cannot be recycled. And when I went to my supermarket, these were the only toothbrushes that I could buy. Non-recyclable toothbrushes. And I thought that was a problem. I thought, well, I know that some plastics can be recycled, but where can I buy recyclable plastic toothbrushes? And what happens to this chap if he can't be recycled? What happens to him? Well, of course, he gets thrown away. And if he gets thrown away, he'll either end up in landfill, buried in the ground, or he might end up in the ocean. And the problem with a toothbrush like that one is that it will last as that toothbrush. We think, we can't be certain, but for up to 400 or 500 years. And we only use it for about 3 months to clean our teeth because then all the bristles bend and the toothbrush is no good anymore. So we humans, we crazy humans, we make a toothbrush that lasts for 500 years, but we only use it for 3 months. And then we throw it away and it can't be recycled. I thought this was crazy. I thought this can't be right. There must be recyclable toothbrushes. And there are. I found this one. Now, this one looks a lot like our hero, Sammy. And you can see I've drawn an S on his tummy and a little face like the toothbrush in the book that I'm going to read you shortly. So this toothbrush is made of all the same plastic. You see that? See how it's all yellow? It's all the same, which means that this toothbrush can be recycled. And that's the very special thing about this plastic toothbrush. However, this toothbrush cost 5 times as much as this toothbrush. This toothbrush was nearly £16 and this one was £3. So this is a very expensive toothbrush, although in the long run, of course, you would agree that it's actually less expensive to the planet. So this is a much better toothbrush to use, but it's still plastic. And I did a little bit more research. I learned a bit more about toothbrushes and I discovered that these toothbrushes exist. This is a bamboo toothbrush. As you can see, if I hold it close, it's made of bamboo wood. And this is biodegradable. If you throw this away into landfill, the body of this toothbrush will rot away and just become a part of the planet. Whereas the body of this toothbrush won't. It has to actively be recycled. If it goes into the wrong bin and ends up in landfill, it could still end up in the ocean, just like Sammy. So you see, there are 3 different types of toothbrush. I didn't know that. This one is very bad. This one is not so bad, but still problematic. And this one is much, much better for the environment. But you cannot buy this kind of toothbrush or this kind of toothbrush in your local supermarket or pharmacy. I've looked. This one I had to get online from a very special shop, as did I have to get this one. from a special place called Brushbox, who specialise in bamboo toothbrushes. And there is still a bit of a problem with this one, which is that the bristles, they are not recyclable. We are yet to design a 100% recyclable toothbrush, but as you see, we are getting better. So I would like all of the supermarkets and chemists to stock these kind of toothbrushes so that we can buy and clean our teeth with something that's much better for the environment. Because if I show you this one again, this one that's very bad, if you think about it, if we only use it for 3 months or 4 months of the year, that means we use 3 plastic toothbrushes a year. And if they're all unrecyclable plastic, every year we're throwing away 3 toothbrushes. Every year of your life. That means I'm in my 40s. That means that I have thrown away already hundreds of toothbrushes, because you have a toothbrush ever since you're very little. Every year, 3 toothbrushes. And that's just for one person on the planet. Think of how many people there are. Think of how many toothbrushes exist out there somewhere that can't be recycled. This is a big problem. And that is why I wanted to tell the story of Sammy, the cheerful yellow toothbrush, in The Tale of a Toothbrush. So I'm going to read it to you now, and then I'm going to talk to you again at the end about the problems with plastic. Because the thing is that we are very, very clever as human beings. We're very clever at thinking what a problem is, identifying that problem, and then working out a solution. That's the best thing about humans, is we're very good at solving puzzles. And we've got a very big puzzle with plastic in the ocean. So we need to find lots of solutions. And I find telling stories and learning about things is the best way to solve problems. Now I have to just show you this wonderful spread right at the beginning of the book. Look at all of those toothbrushes. Do you see? They're all the plastic kind that can't be recycled, except for Sammy. Can you see Sammy there? I love these end papers, they're called. So let me tell you the tale of a toothbrush. I hope you're sitting comfortably, and maybe you've got some squidlies or sharks or other good ocean creatures to keep you comfy as you listen to this story. And at the end of the story, if you have any questions, your mum or your dad or your carer can type them in, and those questions can be asked to me, and I can answer them live on the internet. So if you think of a good question whilst I'm reading, make sure you tell your parent and they can ask at the end. And then right at the end, after we've answered questions, talked a bit more about plastic, and I've read you the story, I'm going to set you a making challenge. So if you like making things, then do wait till the end whilst I challenge you to make something out of plastic. Okay, here we go. The Tale of a Toothbrush. 6-year-old Sophia was allowed to choose her own toothbrush. She picked one as yellow as sunshine and drew an S on its tummy. "Now everyone knows this is my toothbrush," she said. "His name is Sammy." Sophia cleaned her teeth with Sammy every morning before school and every night before bed. Sammy was a very happy toothbrush. One day, Sophia's mum saw that Sammy's bristles were worn out. "Oh dear," she said. "Sophia needs a new toothbrush." And she threw Sammy away. "That's not Sammy!" cried Sophia when she saw a red toothbrush beside the sink. "Where is he?" But the dustman had emptied the bins, and they had taken Sammy away. You see that there? Sophia's very sad. She doesn't want a new toothbrush. She wants her Sammy. She wants the toothbrush that she chose all herself. It was dark inside the black rubbish sack. Sammy was squashed up against an empty shampoo bottle. "Hello," he said. "I'm Sophia's toothbrush." "Not any more you're not," said the grumpy shampoo bottle. "You're rubbish now." "We're doomed," wailed the plastic bag, "and I only got used once." "I want Sophia," Sammy thought. "I don't like it in here." You see all of the plastic items all squished together in the black rubbish sack. The blast of a ship's horn startled Sammy. "What's happening?" he squeaked. "We're on a boat," said a crushed soapbox. "You mean I'm a sailor?" Sammy smiled. "Wait till I tell Sophia." Sammy sailed across the sea for countless days and nights. Then there was a grinding sound and a clang, followed by a dazzling light. You see him there on the boat with the soapbox, sailing across the sea, because we sometimes send our rubbish far, far away. Sammy was tipped up and tumbled down with jars, bottles, wrappers, and bags. You see him falling there. They're all very scared because they don't know what's happening to them. This new, hot place was a long way from Sophia. A big rat scampered up and sniffed him. "Help me, please," Sammy said. "I sailed here on a boat, but I want to go back home." "Hold tight." The rat took Sammy between his teeth and dragged him to the river. "This river leads to the sea. Go back the way you came. Good luck." There he is, the friendly rat. "Thank you, friend rat," Sammy called as he floated away. You see him floating away? Now, where do you think that river goes? You guessed it. The sun rose and the sun set 100 times as Sammy sailed the seas. He washed up on a golden beach and saw a pink toothbrush dancing with a plastic bottle under a palm tree. "Where am I?" he asked them. "Love Island," replied the pink toothbrush. "Our love will last as long as we do," said the plastic bottle, embracing the toothbrush. "Forever." "Oh, but I can't stay," Sammy said as a wave tugged at his toes. "I'm searching for the way home to Sophia." "Oh, does she love you?" the pink toothbrush asked. "Oh, yes, she drew an S on my tummy." "Then you must find her," the plastic bottle replied. You see them? There they are on Love Island. And look at all the plastic that's washed up on the shore. Can you see what the crab is carrying? Sammy sailed for days and weeks and months, swirling and whirling in the middle of the ocean. He met a detergent bottle who thought it was a pirate ship, tried to talk to a deflated balloon, and swam up to a raft of plastic straws who had banded together. But none of them could help him find his way home. And you see there, you've got the pirate ship and the straws, and there's poor Sammy being swirled and whirled in the ocean waves. Sammy began to give up hope. "Dearest stars," he said as he bobbed about in the ocean, "I'm lost. Can you help me find the way back to Sophia?" "Go north by northeast," said the first star. "Twinkle, twinkle," said the second. In the morning, an albatross flew down, landing on the water beside Sammy. "Yum!" The albatross pecked his tummy. "Ow! Don't eat me," Sammy cried. "I'm plastic. I'll make you sick." "But I'm hungry," the albatross squawked. "Well, then eat a fish," Sammy replied. "Aren't you a fish?" the albatross asked, cocking his head. "I'm a toothbrush," Sammy told him, "trying to get home." See the albatross? He thinks that Sammy looks like a fish. "Where is home?" asked the albatross. "Well, the stars told me to sail north by northeast," Sammy replied. "I bring luck to those who sail the seas," the albatross blinked. "I will help you." He dipped his head and scooped the yellow toothbrush up in his beak. "I am flying!" Sammy whooped as he rose up towards the clouds. "If only Sophia could see me now!" There he is, flying up, away from the ocean, home towards Sophia. The albatross flew over oceans and high mountain ranges until, at last, they reached Sophia's house. He placed Sammy on the doormat and whispered, "Goodbye." "Look, Mummy! It's Sammy!" Sophia hugged the yellow toothbrush. "It can't be," her mother frowned. "It is. You can see where I drew the S on his tummy." "But you cannot clean your teeth with him, Sophia," her mother said. "He's dirty." Sammy's heart sank. Sophia stared at the old yellow toothbrush. "I may not be able to brush my teeth with him," she said, "but I can brush my doll's hair with him, and I can clean my football boots with him, and paint with him. He is still very useful." And there he is, being used for things other than teeth cleaning. Sammy now lives in a jam jar on a shelf in the toy cupboard. When Sophia sleeps, the toys beg him to tell them the story of how the toothbrush travelled the world. "I rode in a truck, sailed on a ship, and got dragged by a rat. I floated across the ocean with the stars for guidance. I flew back to Sophia in the beak of an albatross. Because without a use and someone to love us, we are all rubbish." There he is, in his jar, in the toy cupboard, still being a very useful toothbrush. And that is the end of the story However, it's not the end of the book, because I really wanted this book to point out some of the problems there are with plastic. I bet you know lots of problems with plastic. There have been lots of very good TV programs that have highlighted this. In particular, there was a program by David Attenborough about the oceans, which showed just how awful plastic is for the life of animals in the sea. And so I wanted at the end Sophia to help people see that plastic's not a very good thing to make stuff from. So here we've got some facts about plastic. And Sophia says many toothbrushes can't be recycled because they're made of a mix of plastic that are difficult to separate. And that's what I showed you at the beginning. Nearly all the toothbrushes in the world are made from plastic. They are. Not many are made from bamboo. We all need to buy more bamboo toothbrushes so that they make more of those. Their bodies are plastic and their bristles are made of nylon fibers. But you only use a toothbrush for 3 or 4 months. That's more than 3 toothbrushes every year. And during your life, you will use roughly 300 toothbrushes. 300. That's so many. Imagine them all floating out in the sea. When we throw plastic away, some is recycled, but most of it is buried, burned, or ends up in our oceans. And over here, I've got a box that shows lots of other types of plastic, not just toothbrushes that end up in the oceans. And it says, a toothbrush is only one kind of plastic item we create. How many other types can you spot in this story? If you have the book at home, you could go through and count all the different types of plastic that you see in the story. And then maybe you can go around your home and look at all of the different plastic you have in your house and think about where that ends up. On average, 8 million pieces of plastic enter our oceans every single day, and this is very bad news for the sea creatures that live there. Plastic has been found washed up on beaches all around the world. So Sammy says here, why don't you try using a bamboo toothbrush? There we go. See, there are lots of different solutions to what we do with plastic. And that's one of the things that I really wanted this story to get people to think about and talk about. Because the more we talk about these things, then the quicker we can come up with really good solutions. So when you're out shopping, do see if you can see the different types of toothbrush. And if you can find bamboo toothbrushes, these really are the best ones that you can get. Now, sometimes it's quite hard because you may look in your house and you might see so many plastic items that it makes you a bit sad. And I feel like that sometimes too. So what I like to do when I'm thinking about ways to use less plastic is I get one thing, like a toothbrush, and I fix that one thing. So now I have bamboo toothbrushes in my house and my children use bamboo toothbrushes. But before, a few years ago, we did used to use plastic ones. But what I would try and do with the plastic ones that I had is I wouldn't throw them away. This one used to be beside the sink. And when I clean things in the kitchen, I have a couple of toothbrushes that I use to get into the niggly different bits under the lids and in little corners and cleaning little bits in like a blender. They're very useful for cleaning for a whole variety of things. So I try and use them as much as possible because it's already been made. So the best thing I can do is keep reusing it for as long as I can, get the most use out of it. The other thing that I found that I could do was I used to get my milk from the supermarket in big plastic cartons, and my family is quite big and we would use a lot of milk every day, and at the end of the month I probably threw away maybe 8 or 9 big 4-litre carton things of milk. Then I discovered locally where I live there was a milkman that would deliver milk in glass bottles, and I could use the milk and then wash out the bottles and put them on the doorstep, and he would take them away. And so after the toothbrush solution, I found the milk solution. And now I love my milkman, and he delivers other things as well, like orange juice and eggs. And actually, it's a very good way of cutting out how much plastic we bring into the house. So I find if you want to reduce the amount of plastic that you have in your home, one thing at a time. I used to have plastic hand squirters that squirted soap onto my hands for washing. Then I thought, when I was little, we didn't have plastic hand squirters. We had bars of soap, and you can still buy bars of soap, and they're usually wrapped in paper too. And they don't make any plastic waste. So I stopped buying plastic soap dispensers, and I now buy bars of soap. I don't have plastic cartons of milk in my fridge, and I don't have plastic toothbrushes. Now, that might not sound very much because I am just one person, but if everybody just did those few small changes, it would reduce the amount of plastic. And the less we use, the less will get made. And eventually, hopefully, we will solve the problem of having too much plastic in the world, as well as finding ways to recycle. And that's another thing that I'm very keen on. Some of you may know that I do write books about beetles and insects. And I discovered that there is an insect larva. It's like a little kind of caterpillar or grub that they've found has an enzyme, which means it can dissolve plastic. So insects might be a helpful part of the solution to help us recycle plastics in the future. So I'm very interested in all of these themes: recycling, reusing, and if we can, not making the problem in the first place. That's why I am a member of the Authors for Oceans group. Now, Authors for Oceans is about 50 to 100 authors who are really concerned about particularly the plastic in the oceans. And together we try and write stories and do events like this to help people think of great solutions so that they don't use so much plastic and so that creatures don't get sad and hurt by these plastics ending up in the ocean. So if you're interested in learning more about Authors for Oceans, you can go to my website or the website Authors for Oceans, and it's the number 4.com, and you can read all about it there and find out about other authors that write about these great books. But what I've tried to do behind me is put up some, I'm really sorry, that's my phone. I'm going to ignore it. It'll stop ringing in a moment. I don't know why it's going now. I should have taken it out of the room. That's the problem with live events. So ignore the telephone. And let me just tell you about some of these books, because these are all fantastic books about fantastic authors who care about this theme, about clearing up plastic. This is the newest one that I've just got for my son, who's 7, and he loves it. Rocket's adventures in Look Up and Clean Up are brilliant, but cleanup's about how she wants to clean up the island where her grandparents live in the Caribbean. And What a Waste is a non-fiction book that gives you lots and lots of helpful information about how to solve the problem of plastic. So that's my little bit. That's my little story and my feelings about plastic. So I wonder if we have any questions that you would like me to answer. Are you there, Linda?
I am here. I love the book, and the way you read it was so fantastic. You bring the characters to life. And the illustrations are so beautiful. And I think something like writing a book like yours, like The Tale of the Toothbrush, it makes you think about these things. We hear about it on television, and people talk about use of plastic, but we carry on using it. We carry on doing that. And I jotted a few things down while you were talking. It's so lovely to hear you talk about your milkman, because when I was a little girl, I was brought up on a farm, and my dad was a milkman, and I spent many hours traveling around delivering milk in the sunshine and the snow and the rain. And then the bottles we would pick up and bring back, and then we would take them down into the dairy. We'd give them a really good wash, and then we'd fill them up again with some more milk, and we'd send them out again. And we forget about things like that because we think that it's so much easier just to go to the supermarket and buy plastic bottles. We don't think about what happens to the plastic bottles. And I think that doing something like this, writing books, the work that the Authors for Oceans are doing, is a fantastic thing to keep it in your mind. What we need to do is keep these things at the front of our minds.
Yes, I agree. And once you have the solution, the thing about the milkman was that I've had a milkman now for about 3 years. And his name is Peter, and he's lovely. And he delivers the milk at like 2 in the morning on a milk float, just like the good old days. I was so delighted when I discovered that it was just like it was when I was a kid. But when it came to lockdown and COVID, there were lots of things I didn't have to worry about because my milkman delivered milk to my house 3 times a week, and also some eggs and some orange juice. And I didn't need to go to the supermarket for those things. And I didn't bring plastic into my house. So it's not just milk that milkmen deliver nowadays.
The next thing that you talked about was the plastic bag. You met a plastic bag when he was in the ocean. And I think so many people think it's so easy to go to the supermarket. Would you like a bag with that? Would you like a bag? What would you say as a solution for not using the plastic bags? What should we do instead of using plastic bags?
I think there's two things. First of all, lots of plastic bags exist. And what we need to do is get the maximum use out of the ones that exist. And when they cease to be of use, we need to make sure that they're not going to be damaging when they are thrown away. So I have a little box, and the plastic bags that I've had for years, after I've used them, I fold them up and I put them in this little shoebox, and I reuse them as many times as possible. I always have plastic bags in my coat pocket folded into tiny triangles, so that I never ever need another new plastic bag. But then when I do a big shop, when I go to a big supermarket and do the family shop, I have a selection of tote bags and cotton bags and bags that like net bags that will last longer. Like I have a little mesh bag that I can use for groceries in Sainsbury's, rather than measuring out 3 onions and putting it in one of those disposable plastic bags just to put a label on it to say how much it's going to cost. I've got a mesh bag that I can reuse and reuse, and it can be washed in the washing machine. So it's things like that. But the more you learn, because this is the thing, is you can make a small fix and then you learn, oh, actually, cotton is problematic, actually, how we harvest cotton. And there's like ways and means to be reduce your impact. It's very difficult to have no impact whatsoever. And so there's a combination between you making some changes at home that shouldn't be too difficult, reusing bags. Reusing is a very important thing. Reuse, recycle. But the main thing is we don't want these things made in the first place, or at least not made with plastic. We want them made with starch, and we want investment in businesses that want to create eco solutions. So really, it's also about getting your voice out there and joining together and saying that the environment matters. And books are a great way of doing that, sharing those books, but also being vocal about the things that matter. That's why the climate strikes, Fridays for Climate, that children have been doing up and down the country since Greta Thunberg started it, are so brilliant. It's just a wonderful way of saying these things really matter to us, because there's only so much that one person can do at home, but we can do some things.
And if everybody does something, then everybody will make a difference. I think that's the most important thing. It's about us all doing. But it's interesting that we don't need the plastic in the first place.
No,
I have one of those mesh bags that I bought from the supermarket in the first place. I've got one in each. I've got one in my handbag. I've got one in my rucksack. And if I don't have it with me, then I just put the groceries as I pick them up. I put them into the basket that I'm carrying around the supermarket or pushing around the supermarket, and then I weigh them at the end separately. When I get them home, I clean them anyway. I always wash the fruit. I always wash the vegetables. So you don't need a plastic bag to bring them home. And I think the main thing is that we, as a society, stop thinking about plastic being the only option. It's kind of the first option that we think of, and we should think beyond that. We do talk about then recycling, but how do we recycle? What happens to the things that we recycle? Do the children know where the things go, how they can be reused, how they can be recycled? What do the recycling things get turned into?
And recycling is a really complex issue, because some recycling programs are really good in some regions and others are less good. And most people don't realize, for example, people know that you can recycle plastics, but they don't know that that this is problematic, that you can't recycle this type of plastic, but you can recycle this type of plastic. And you think of all of the plastic items that exist in your home. I don't think anyone ever specifically said to me, oh, you can only recycle plastic if it's all made out of exactly the same type of plastic. No one has ever said that to me. It was only when I started researching toothbrushes in particular that I discovered why there were such problematic items, because they can't be recycled, which means that does mean they're either going to get incinerated, which means they get turned into a horrible toxic gas that goes into our atmosphere, which we don't want to breathe in, or buried. And you do think human beings are quite clever, because, you know, we've invented lots of things, but why are we so stupid that we invented something like this that lasts 500 years? This will last 6 times as long as my entire life. And I only use it for such a short period of time. I think that recycling is one solution, but if we didn't make the mess in the first place, that would be much better, I think.
I agree with you. One of the questions that came in was, how important is it for our younger children to understand about climate change?
Well, this is the thing. There's a lot. I get quite cross with the media, because there's a lot in the media, on TV and in newspapers, about climate change, and it's all very scary. It's all very, oh, we're doing terrible things and the world is over, etc. But Mother Nature is incredibly forceful, incredibly strong. And where we've put really good plans into action, where we won't let people fish in a certain part of the ocean, or if we won't let people hunt in a certain part of a forest, then nature comes back really, really strong. And there are some really incredible advances being made, particularly in the oceans work there. And they're all being made by children. So obviously everybody knows that Greta Thunberg has started a worldwide movement of young people speaking out for climate change, which I think is really important and very powerful. And if you're a parent like me, you listen to that kind of thing. That's a great way of getting the adults to pull their finger out and do something good. So that's a great way, by speaking out. The other thing is that there's a wonderful initiative called Ocean Cleanup, which was started by a teenage boy called Boyan Slat. He is a Norwegian boy, and he used to love scuba diving when he was a kid. And as he, like, year after year, as he used to dive, he got more and more upset with the amount of plastic he was finding down on the bottom of the ocean where he lived. And he was a child who was interested in engineering. And at the age of 17, he went to a big technology fair with a little prototype idea that he had to use the ocean currents to collect and gather plastic that was in the top portion of the ocean and harvest it into nets, and then recycle that plastic into something new. And he won a prize for his amazing idea. And a few years later, he's now in his early 20s, lots of millionaires have invested in this project, the Ocean Cleanup. And just this week, I retweeted something, which was Chris Haddow, the astronaut, wearing a pair of really cool sunglasses that had been made from recycled plastic from the ocean cleanup thing, which is now exists in the middle of the garbage patch in the Pacific. They're already harvesting plastic and recycling it. So that is an initiative that came from the brain of a 17-year-old. There is an Irish teenager who last year won a prize because they've developed an enzyme that can recycle plastic, dissolve plastic, so like stop it from being a problem. And of course there's Greta. Now these are all children, and so I think stories like this, positive stories that offer solutions, not doomy stories, because as I said, human beings are great problem solvers and children are so imaginative. They need to understand that the world is theirs for the saving, and there's lots to save. It's never too late. And so I don't like some of the things that are said about climate change, because I feel like if you think it's too late, why bother trying?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's too late. Sure, like things may be changing in a way that will end up with a certain type of future, but we can stop mass extinctions. We can stop making plastic. Children are very powerful, and they are the grown-ups of the future. And that's why I write for children. I think children are more important than any grown-up out there.
Because they're the ones who form the future. And the future is
Yes,
theirs.
exactly.
And the future is theirs. I was watching something on television about the seabirds and how the seabirds are eating the plastic because
Yes,
they're trying to take plastic back from the ocean. They're trying to take plastic back in their tummies to feed their young. And of course,
yes. And it's desperately sad, but that's why the albatross is the animal that I feature in this story,
that's
because
what I
the
was going to ask.
albatross, yeah, it's the biggest sufferer of this problem. Albatrosses cannot tell the difference between a toothbrush and a fish. There has been horrific amounts of plastic found in the bellies of albatross chicks who have died from plastic consumption because of the plastic in the oceans. The impact on the wildlife, both above and below the surface, of having plastic in our seas it's tragic, and it's absolutely it's soul destroying when you see it. And we don't need to have plastic toothbrushes. We can have bamboo ones. And I'd rather have a bamboo toothbrush and living albatrosses. Thank you very much.
So would I. So would I. Now then, I'm just looking at time. We did get some questions about your other books.
Yes.
Yes, we got some questions about your Beetle books. There's a lady called Tiffany Haig, and she has two girls, and they sent a few questions in for us. They said, what do you love about beetles and insects? And do you have a favourite?
Oh, well, there is a lot that I love about insects. Beetles are my favorite insects, so I'm going to speak very specifically about beetles. Because I used to, before I wrote the books, I used to be scared of lots of insects and arachnids. I was quite scared of spiders. I say quite, terrified would be more honest. But when I was writing Beetle Boy, I met lots of entomologists and I met lots of beetles. And now I very famously keep pet beetles. I've only got some larvae here at the moment. They're not particularly handsome creatures. They look like big, fat, white caterpillars. But beetles are actually quite adorable when you get to know them. And I used to think that insects didn't really have brains or personalities or character. But if you keep them at home, if you get to know them, this is going to sound crazy, but it's like saying, oh, all cats are the same. That's not true. You get haughty cats and greedy cats and lap cats, and it's exactly the same with beetles. I've had beetles that just sit on their beetle jelly and munch it all the time and never leave. I've got beetles that are always trying to fly and are a bit crazy. I've got beetles that like to fight each other and are quite aggressive, and they all have characters. And so the thing about beetles that I love in particular is they are the most varied species of creature on the planet. There are over 400,000 known different types of beetle on this planet. And we think there's probably more like 2 million, but we've only discovered 400,000 of them. And they all look different. They all eat different things. They've got slight different modifications on their bodies. Some of them are beautiful. Some of them are disgusting, but in like the coolest, most hilarious of ways. Some of them fire acid from their butts at like predators. Wow. I mean, they're amazing. So the thing is you can never be bored when you're learning about beetles. And the lovely thing about writing the Beetle books was that it was a learning curve, and still is. And hopefully we'll be bringing beetles to your TV screens, which will be amazing. So I'm never going to stop loving and learning beetles. But my favorite beetle, to answer that very specific question, is the Australian rainbow stag beetle. And if you don't know what that beetle looks like, you should Google it, because it is beautiful. It has an iridescent exoskeleton, which means it kind of shimmers with every color of the rainbow. They look shape-wise and size-wise like a British stag beetle, but they have this extra kind of Technicolor dream coat, and they're the ones that I keep as pets because they live a good long time and they don't eat anything disgusting like poo or dead stuff. They eat jellies. So they're my favorite.
Those sound amazing. I spent some time in Australia, and I never got over the fact that everything in Australia is so much big So much bigger,
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
than so big and so dangerous. Everything there is so dangerous. We had an author speaking to us over the weekend, Bren Dibble, and she was talking about the crocodiles in the oceans and the rivers and the sharks and things. So that was a really interesting thing to listen to. Now, Tiff went on to say that reading those books has given us, that's her family, a whole new perspective on beetles, and we now love them. And
Yay!
they especially love seeing the pictures that you put on Twitter, the jewel beetles.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, they're so beautiful that they've been worn as jewelry for hundreds of years by humans. So yeah, that's the thing, is that people often think that insects are, well, every word you use to describe an insect, it's usually like creepy or crawly or disgusting or dirty, and people think that they're disease ridden and all these things, and it's not true. Some of them are staggeringly beautiful, incredible. Like some of them even have like superhero type skills. They are amazing. People's idea of what an insect is usually ill-informed, and I know this because before I started out on the beetle adventures, I was very ill-informed when it came to insects.
I don't know much about beetles, but I absolutely adore spiders. I love spiders. Another question was about the beetle books, which again, you've said that some beetles are horrible and nasty. The Beetle Queen of your story, and she's a great baddie. And what was your inspiration for Lucretia?
Lucretia, yeah. So
Lucretia.
Lucretia
She
Cutter.
says Poppy loves her fashion.
Yes, well, that's the thing. So I too love fashion. There is a particular fashion designer who inspired Lucretia Cutter, and his name is Alexander McQueen. And Alexander McQueen took silhouettes and patterns from the natural world and made them into these incredible, incredible outfits. But he has designed a whole range of beetle-based clothes, where he's used the pattern that's on a Goliath beetle's exoskeleton on fabric, and he loves beetles. And so if you're ever interested in real beetle fashion, you should just Google Alexander McQueen Beetles and you'll see some incredible dresses. But I saw an exhibition about Alexander McQueen at the V&A, which was quite a long time ago now, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And I'd followed Alexander McQueen for a long time. And I knew that Lucretia Cutter combined science and fashion. I'm very interested in the segue between the arts and the sciences. I'm a big fan of what we call STEAM rather than STEM education. I think if you introduce arts into the sciences, technology, engineering, maths, I think that actually you get a much more interesting, creative type of solutions to problems. And so I wanted her to really represent that. But I wanted her to be someone who had what you might consider to be a good political motivation at the beginning, but she takes it way too far to a place that's really dark. And I find that sometimes, because those 3 books really do also discuss the theme of climate change and what humans are doing or aren't doing to fight it. And she's someone who just thinks that the human race deserves to be obliterated. She's taken she's taken her view really too far. But she, at one point in time, she was a decent human being with rational thought, but she's taken it to a real extreme. And she's also based on, when I was a teenager, I saw a horrible, horrible horror movie that gave me nightmares forever. And it was called The Fly, in which a man stepped inside a machine and was genetically mixed up with a fly. And it still horrifies me.
I remember that.
Yes.
I remember
so
that.
She's a mixture of all of those things: a horror movie, a fashion icon that I adore, and a political opinion taken way too far.
Right, we're looking at time now. We've got about 6 minutes left. I could talk to you all morning, Maya. You've been so fantastic. It's just, you're so interesting, and I've got so many questions that we didn't get a chance to ask. So perhaps we could go on to your challenge. Just quickly answer the challenge before we wrap up.
So for everybody who's watching, I would like you to do something, because it's half term. nothing better than a creative activity, a challenge for your half-term project. I would like you to look into the bins in your house, the waste bins in the rooms. Maybe you could run around the house and time yourself, maybe only give yourself 5 minutes to find as many interesting things in your bins as possible that are made from plastic. And you can add a few things in there if you want to get creative. I want you to collect an armful of junk, recyclable or non-recyclable junk, and put it on your kitchen table or on a surface somewhere. Get some sticky tape and some paint, and I want you to build a monster out of plastic, okay? Because plastic is the monster that's devouring our oceans. So you are going to build a plastic monster to symbolize just how bad and evil plastic actually is for our oceans. Now, I've got a slide that I'm going to end with here just to show you some examples of brilliant plastic monsters that other children have made so that you get some inspiration. So yeah, I'm going to say goodbye because this will be the last time you see my face. Thank you for having me. I'd love you to look at these plastic monsters, then run around your own house, gather your own things and build your own plastic monster. And if you make it and take a picture and you share it on Facebook with Kirklees Library or Cosmia Festival or on Twitter or anywhere, and at me in, then I will share it on my website because I've got a gallery of brilliant plastic monsters that children are making to help highlight this theme. So shall I share that image now, Linda?
Yeah, the image. And just if this is the last time we're going to see your face, I just want to say thank you so much for this morning. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Great.
We've all got a lot now to think about. So
yes,
the pictures. Let's have the pictures.
Yes.
Of what
okay. And make sure you look out for bamboo toothbrushes. They're brilliant. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. This is obviously technologically advanced here. It's not really. You can still hear me, I think. Can you still hear me? Can you see?
We can still hear you. We can still see you.
Oh, can you? Brilliant. Amazing.
No, you're fine. And we've got the pictures there.
Perfect. Okay, so here we have in this grid some wonderful plastic monsters that were made over the summer holidays by children doing the Monster Plastic Challenge. I love them all. I think they're wonderful. I particularly love, can you see the robot with all the bottle tops stuck to his body and it says reduce, reuse, recycle. That's a very important mantra, but it doesn't have to be fancy. I just want to see your creative brains working and making those plastic monsters. That would be amazing.
Thank you for that. Now, can I just ask if we could we'll leave the monsters up there so that people can have a look at them, but if I could just ask, are you happy to stay with us for a few minutes while I just say what's happening next?
Of course.
Okay, so the next event to watch out for is for an author, Nathan Bryan, an illustrator, Dapo Adoala, and it's the book that you mentioned. So I'm just going to show you this, which is, there we go. That's their overlay. That is the next. That's the next event for children picture books, and it's called Clean Up. It's an early years picture book about climate change and the environment. And Clean Up is the sequel, as you mentioned earlier, to Nathan and Dapo's debut book, which was Look Up. So join the lovable, passionate Rocket as she sets off on a mission to save a Caribbean island from plastic pollution. So that's, just take that one off again. And then the next thing that we have to remember is, I did tell you at the beginning of our session about the wonderful offer that Reeds have got. So that's Reeds.
Yes.
It's on the ground floor, and it's in Holmfirth. It's near the library, and they're going to give us 20% discount. So to take advantage of this, you're going to need a special code. So that's the address. That's where you need to go to. This is the code that you need. So we've got CFMG20, and that's the code that you need when you get to Reed's Bookshop, so that you can have your very own Tale of the Toothbrush.
Tale of a Toothbrush.
And that's also for the books that we've mentioned for Clean Up as well, which is the one that's coming up next.
And I have to say, if you've enjoyed this event, you're going to love this. This is a great book. My son absolutely adores both Look Up and Clean Up. It's fantastic.
We'll just take that screen share down. Take your screen down for the last second.
Okay, stop sharing.
Okay.
There we go.
And if we just put you back on so that the children can see those books, I'll
Yes.
take that code off, and those are the two books. So we have Tale of a Toothbrush and Clean Up, which is about the Caribbean. And that's
yes.
coming up, as we said before. We'll go back to the brand. There we go. That's coming up on Thursday, the 29th of October at 11 o'clock. Thank you, Maya. It's been absolutely fantastic. I've thoroughly enjoyed this morning, and I'm going to now go and look on the internet for a bamboo toothbrush.
Yes, do. Thank you for having me. I hope everyone has a great Cosmia Festival. Bye, Linda, and bye everyone at Kirklees Library.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.